Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. Sorry for the late start tonight. We just had an extended closed session. Before we begin, I will remind Council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. I'll start with a roll call of Council for the benefit of those watching this meeting. I, Councillor Merlihan, am present and will be chairing this meeting. Mayor Shantz.
I'm present.
Councillor Martin.
Present.
Councillor McMillan.
Present.
Councillor Redekop.
Present.
And Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Okay, great. Welcome all to the meeting. I would like that the resolution that Council reconvenes into open session. Councillor Martin and Mayor Shantz, all those in favor? And that's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Any members of council? No, okay, not seen any. There are no items to come forward from closed session. There are no public meetings. There are no presentations. There's no delegations. We have no unfinished business. Consent items. Are there any consent items that anybody from council wishes to bring forward? See none. If I can have a resolution that the following consent items be approved and or received for information. Councillor Shantz, and a seconder for that. Mr. Councillor Redekop, all those in favor? And that's carried. There are some correspondence, the City of Vaughan resolution for National Teen Driver Safety Week and Good Roads call for Board of Directors nominations. Is there anybody want to bring those forward? Oh, is that part of the, oh, that is part of the dissent. Okay, we will move on. There was some committee of adjustment minutes in there too for anybody who wants to run and get the agenda. We are going to move on to staff reports and memos. We have a revised proposed draft 2022 council meeting schedule, and I will turn the mic to Clerk Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, as council requested, we have provided a revised report for your consideration this evening. It includes two proposed schedules for the 2022 meeting schedule, one with meetings generally on Monday nights and one with meetings on Tuesday nights. I've outlined in the report, or we have outlined in the report, some of the impacts on boards and committees and some other matters, and I think those are mostly fairly easy. I mean, there'll be some changes that we'll have to work through, but I think we can do that. I think what I'd like to draw council's attention to is the public impacts section of the report. Just that the public is used to seeing agendas being published on Fridays, having the weekend. Some of them may be used to having the weekend to review packages, and then all of Tuesday, all of Monday to submit or ask questions from staff, and then to submit requests to add items to the agenda, correspondence, or to be a delegation. So just that it would be an adjustment for the public, and really that's a consideration that council needs to make. So ultimately, the report doesn't have a recommendation. There are two options for council to consider: the Monday night meeting schedule or the Tuesday night meeting schedule, both in the report, and that is up for council's consideration tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Redekop, you have a question?
Yeah. Does most of Canadian public holidays land on Monday? Does this make the agenda more complex for the staff as well in getting dates?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we do have several holidays that fall on Mondays. Council has generally requested that those that are meeting schedule, whether it was on Tuesday or presumably on Monday would avoid those days anyways. So council isn't required, and the public as well isn't required to read their package over a holiday Monday. I think we may have had one or two in the past, but we've generally tried to avoid those weeks anyways.
Thank you.
Any other members of council have questions? Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, not really a question, just a comment. When I went through the report, I didn't take that into consideration when we were talking about it, as far as a Monday versus a Tuesday meeting, and being able to discuss some of the items with staff on the Monday and preparing for the Tuesday. So that's the only I guess hurdle that I see changing it from a Tuesday to a Monday, but I'm open either way.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Anybody want to pick a recommendation and move it? Councillor Martin?
To me, it doesn't matter either way. So we'll start it off. Let's stay with Tuesday night, see where that goes.
Okay, do we have a seconder for keeping the schedule the same? Okay. Does somebody else want to have a recommendation? There's only one other option. Councillor Shantz.
If we could just back up a little bit before we throw that one out with the bathwater. What was the reason we were going to change? If somebody can remind me of that, because it's been a while since we talked about this. So I just wondering why this came forward.
I can speak a little bit to that. When this schedule had come forward, I guess back when Clerk Hummel was still here, I had made the request for Mondays because of work schedule, and I had made this request, I think the previous council, and there were Councillor Bauman was part of the volunteer firefighter, and some meetings overlapped on Mondays, which why we couldn't be accommodated at that point. Those kinds of things weren't addressed. And then Councillor McMillan also agreed that his schedule would work better on a Monday for his work schedule. And I believe a couple other members, maybe Councillor Redekop, didn't really have a say at the time. He didn't have a problem with any of the days. So that's why we had asked council to come back with, the clerk to come back with an alternative schedule that has Monday as the meeting date. Councillor Shantz?
Okay, so I'll move that we go with the Monday schedule then, if it's going to suit people better.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Martin, I guess. Any more discussion? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Merlan. Through you, is there a preference from staff? Does it matter one way or another to staff?
Clerk Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think I did address, some questions that we had through the senior management team and other staff. Right now, the senior management team meets on Mondays. That has been very helpful for us when issues come up over the weekend. Just this past weekend, we had some issues in a park in Breslau that it was very good to have that discussion on the Monday. Having said that, if senior staff need to meet another day, that's something we can do. I think the other piece for staff is there's several internal deadlines that we have created in order to meet council schedule time. Both internal deadlines to individual departments, as well as deadlines to meet the clerk's office time that we prepare and post the agenda online. I think you likely saw it in the report, but for the members of the public listening, because of the notice that our agenda provides to the public for changes or decisions that council's making, We do think it's important to change the day the packages are published to Thursdays. So that would in turn change some other deadlines that we have internally. Again, it would be an adjustment for staff, but it's something that I think we can accomplish.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody, Mayor Shantz?
Thank you. I wonder if staff could give some consideration to providing the packages prior to Thursday, maybe Tuesday, to give those extra days in the week for those kinds of discussions. As a consideration. I know it will mean some changes, but if we're looking at changing things up anyway, maybe it's a good time to make that consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Shantz. If nobody has any more comments, I'll take a vote on the motion that's on the table. All those in favor? And against? And that's carried. Okay, the next item of business is a zone change application by Paul Weber. The manager of planning, Jeremy Vink, is going to introduce his report. Good evening, Jeremy. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, members of council and Mr. Chair. So this is zone change application 1/2021 for Paul Weaver. Property is located at the end of Delian Place, which is 1261 Delian. It's a 42 hectare farm, about 104 acres in size. The applicant is proposing a site-specific amendment to the agricultural zone to allow to alter the on-farm diversified use regulations to allow outdoor storage to exceed 35% of the ground floor area to go up to 109%, and to have some of the outdoor storage permitted in the front of the structure, in front of the building itself, instead of just the rear. In terms of the provincial policy statements and the regional official plan, on-farm diversified uses are permitted and allowed. Our township official plan has the policies that allow the on-farm diversified uses also. In this case, and we have regulations around that it has to be in the farm cluster, part of an active farm operation, limited in area, and the area of operation will not exceed the 2% of the farm parcel. All of these other criteria are being met, so they are complying to all of the criteria that are established in the official plan. Staff is also satisfied that compatibility of the use is not a concern. The nearest house is about 250 meters away, so there's no concern with the operation. In terms of the actual zone change request, given the location of the property, end of Delian Place, which is a dead-end road, the storage in the front of the property, in front of the building, is not such a significant concern because almost nobody comes back in there and sees the property. You can't really see it from any other road until you're almost at the property. So the visibility is pretty limited in this case. Actually, for the storage in the rear behind the building, that is actually visible from Arthur Street as you're traveling along. You can see the rear of the property off Arthur Street. So having the larger structures, the grain bins that they produce in the front of the building is actually less visible and less obtrusive than if it was placed into the rear. So staff doesn't have a concern in this case about having the storage in the front. In terms of the size of the storage, we recognize there's a unique situation here. The bins they create very large bins, which is not typical. So these bins do take up a lot of space, and they're moving them around in front of the property. They are staying within that 2% land area, obviously, and that's a very small portion of the actual overall operating farm. So it's still remaining very accessory and minor. So staff has also determined in this case that the increased outdoor storage area is not a concern at this time, just based on everything put together. So we're willing to support that. There is one other element that we've added and for the report. The applicants have a tower that they use to help lift and construct and assemble these buildings, and it's 60 feet high. The current zoning regulations we have in place limit the height to 7.3 meters. So this building, though, was erected back in 2010 as a farm structure. In our previous zoning regulations, this building would have been permitted as part of the industrial use as a non-farm use. So staff is just recognizing it is a small footprint building. That this case, that the use, we recognize the height of this structure as part of the zone change, just to bring everything into conformity. So all put together, staff is satisfied that the use can conform and that the zoning as recommended in the attached bylaw be approved. There are set maximums in terms of, like I said, the size, outdoor storage area total, where the certain products will be. The raw storage will be into the rear, and the larger bins that are being assembled will be allowed in the front portion, and just recognizing that height. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, Council, any questions for Mr. Vink regarding this application? Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Mr. Vink. So I'm assuming that there's not going to be a lot of these bins being stored. They probably go out when they're finished, and there might be one or two at any given time, but probably on the road as soon as they get built. They wouldn't pre-build them, would they?
So actually, the front yard is a stockpile area. They will have a number of them ready to go at different, and some of them are in different points of assembly. So there could be a bunch of them sitting there at any one point of time. But obviously, yes, just before shipment goes out, there's going to be a large amount. Once the shipment goes out, they're gone, and it kind of empties out a little bit again. So there's more than one or two sitting there at any point of time, potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Shantz.
Thank you. Has there been any discussion around some kind of screening, natural screening like trees or anything like that?
Yes, so thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, to the Mayor Shantz. Definitely, as for the report, they will go through site plan approval after this. So site plan is going to look at adding some screening just so it doesn't become as powerful. So we will be looking at landscaping, which would include tree planting, just to soften the appearance.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any more questions for Mr. Vink? We do have planner Bob Black that would like to speak to council. Just wait for him to get on screen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's Bob Black.
Okay, welcome to our meeting. I don't see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and township staff. As was indicated, it's Bob Black from RBA Planning Consultants Limited in Elmira, and I am representing Mr. Paul Weber on this zone change application. I just wanted to voice my support of the planning report as prepared and as recommended by Township Planner Jeremy Vink. As you may know, Paul Weber operates a beef feedlot on his 104-acre farm, and it's located on DeLion Place. This use is the primary use of the farm. Secondary to the farm use is Trilon metal fabricating and welding that manufactures steel upright bins used in the agricultural community to feed all types of livestock. Trilane fabricating and welding has existed since 2006 and currently employs 5 local residents, plus Paul himself works in the shop. They are all able to walk, ride a bicycle, or drive their horse and buggy to work each day. And this provides local jobs for the surrounding community and supports economic development in the township. As Jeremy mentioned, the rezoning application was necessary to allow relief from zoning provisions recently adopted by Township required to regulate on-farm businesses. More specifically, the application is to alter the on-farm diversified use regulations in section 6.22.9 of bylaw 5586 as amended to allow the outside storage area to exceed 35% of ground floor area to 109%, and the outdoor storage to be permitted ahead of the building instead of to the rear of the building. The Weber Farm is in prime agricultural area. As defined by the PPS, the Provincial Policy Statement, a place to grow, and the guidelines on permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural areas, a number of tests are required to be met when considering approval of an on-farm diversified use. As on-farm diversified use, the metal fabricating and welding shop meets these tests in the guidelines as it is located on a farm. It is secondary to the farm. It is limited in area and is compatible with surrounding agricultural uses. The regional official plan permits secondary uses in the agricultural area, provided the use is secondary to the main use, is limited in area, and is compatible with surrounding uses. The region in their comments had no objection to the proposed changes. The township's official plan allows on-farm diversified uses provided they are in the farm cluster, on an active farm, limited in area, not to exceed 2%, and limit the land being taken out of agriculture. It's our opinion that this use does conform to the PPS, or the provincial policy statement, place to grow, the guidelines on permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural areas, in addition to conforming to the regional official plan and the township official plan. There are a number of reasons for requiring the site-specific zoning to increase the area for outside storage in front of the shop building. They include the farm is on a dead-end road, and outside storage in front of the building is not visible until one drives to the end of DeLion Place. The area proposed for outdoor storage is and has been for a number of years out of agricultural production. This area is already gravelled to provide for large trucks to load the steel, the finished steel bins. To locate the outside storage behind or to the east of the buildings will require removing considerable land out of agriculture and then removing the gravel yard in front of the buildings. To require finished product storage north of the building puts it in clear view of Arthur Street, which is not desirable. That would be the finished product stored north of the building. The plant production and processing is established, and the assembly and loading tower is towards the front of the building where the finished steel bins are stored. Lastly, the steel bins are large, 20 feet in diameter and up to 60 feet long. And they require a lot of outside storage area and maneuverability for the trucks that pick these bins up. For these reasons, and those in the staff planning report, we support the staff recommendation and request the committee to recommend approval to council to adopt the bylaw as proposed in the planning report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Does any council member have questions for Mr. Black? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you for your participation tonight, Mr. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Council, any additional questions for Mr. Vink or discussion, or there is a recommendation before us? Any option will do. Councillor Martin.
I will move the recommendation that's before us.
Okay. Any seconder on that? Councillor Schatz. Any more discussion? Okay. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Mr. Vink. Moving along, we are on other business. Does anybody have any council reports or updates they would like to provide? Not seeing any. We have an outstanding activity list. Are there any items that anybody would like to bring forward? Okay, not seeing any. Then we have a notice. Now we don't do adjournment because we need to go back into closed session. Is that correct? So how do I do? We have a motion to go into closed? Okay.
I'll move we
okay.
go into closed.
Mayor Shantz will move going into closed session. Seconder, Councillor McMillan, all those in favor? Oh, sorry. Before you vote, Clerk Smith, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, council didn't finish all the closed session business before the meeting. I would recommend that the motion that council passes is to go into closed session. as shown on your agenda for the purposes of litigation or potential litigation and a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land.
Okay, thank you. We'll add the recommendation that is that to the motion, and all those in favor? And that is carried. So good evening. This ends the public portion of the evening. We'll be continuing in closed, and have a good evening.
No, not yet. I guess you can do this part if you want to motion to adjourn. Do you care? Okay. Thank you. We have nothing to report out from our closed session, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Merlehan, seconded by Councillor Shantz. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening, and have a good night. Council will just wait for staff to finish up the live stream.